Alright, what's going on everybody? Welcome back to another video here on the channel, and today we're going to be talking about the massive MrBeast response video that just came out about 12 hours ago as of the time of me recording this video. So this video has been a long-awaited response from MrBeast regarding several controversies that have started to build up over the last few months. I mean, we went from the whole Chris Ava Tyson thing to fake lottery scams to moldy lunch leads to abuse in the workplace. You name it, there's been an allegation about it pretty much at this point, right? So the biggest prominent examples of this have been the Dogpack 404 videos, which are 3 videos made by Dogpack 404, the YouTuber, which is where a pretty good majority of these allegations have all really kind of started from. There's also Rosina Pansino, who is another YouTuber who has also kind of joined in, especially with like the whole Lunchley mold controversy and whatnot. Now, I already talked a little bit about the initial MrBeast situation. I made a video about that. Then I've also made the Lunchley mold controversy video talking about that whole situation. Now, this video was uploaded to Oompaville's YouTube channel yesterday. It's about a 2.5 hour long interview sit down with obviously Oompaville hosting the entire thing, and then MrBeast is basically just kind of responding to the questions. It's a pretty relaxed, laid back conversation. And so in this video, I'm basically gonna just be kind of covering the entire thing, talking about MrBeast's response, kind of going a little bit more in depth on, you know, what does he say about all of these different controversies, because obviously we're basically tying together multiple videos worth of information at this point. So I'm just going to go through, I'm going to show the clip of MrBeast responding, and then I'm going to talk about that afterwards. So I don't really know how long this video is going to be, so for brevity's sake, I'm going to try and just get pretty much right into all of this.
The Ava stuff came out, and I put out that tweet. We hired the investigators to go look into it, and part of that investigation is they recommended that I not talk about drama or really do anything online because it might influence, you know, witnesses or any people they might interview or ex-employees. So it's a little unfortunate because I told them, okay, I'll wait till the investigation is over. And I believe that was literally like a week before the Dogpack video came out.
So obviously the Chris Ava Tyson situation, that was the real big first thing that kind of broke, where everyone's like, okay, now what exactly is going on over there at MrBeast's company? How exactly does something like this happen with a YouTube channel, mostly involving a child's audience? How much did MrBeast know about this? Did he know that Chris Ava Tyson was this psychopathic weird person beforehand, right? Now, the reason, according to MrBeast in this clip, that he basically didn't come out and try and like debunk anything when all of this was initially going on was because he hired a third-party investigator team to come in and investigate his company, see if there was any wrongdoing, basically to like kind of clear him and the company's image. Now, he claims that, oh, I only expected for this to take like 2 or 3 weeks, but it was way more in depth than I expected. They went through my phone logs, they went through all the company stuff. He says it ended up taking a few months. Now, I kind of believe him on this point. The issue is, it was all presented as like, oh, MrBeast has hired this investigator team to investigate his company. So to most people, that just automatically obviously ringed alarm bells, where it's like, okay, what the fuck is going on here? How is he going to be able to, you know, basically pay somebody to say that he's innocent or whatever, right? He says, I wanted to wait until all of this was out of the way before I started responding to controversies. That's what they kind of requested that I do. That way it doesn't impede on the investigation or anything here. Now, it is also important to reference the fact that, you know, people are like, oh, MrBeast basically paid them to say that he was innocent. That technically isn't true, because the investigation did apparently find some things wrong in the company practices. More specifically, the like charges of harassment or whatever that people have kind of levied against MrBeast. Those were, I guess, a concern that the company had. MrBeast, oh, well, I can't really investigate every single relationship in the company. There's hundreds of employees here. I can't oversee every little thing. That's basically his comeback for this. Now, I understand, oh, I don't want to impede on the investigation. I don't want to step on my own foot here, right? I get that logic, but I feel like there was at least a way where this could have been addressed and, you know, you don't foil the investigation. I think at least like coming out and saying anything would have been better than kind of keeping it all tucked back, right? Now, this is the point of this entire video here is, I guess he's like addressing everything all at once instead of like trying to piecemeal all the different controversies and go at them one at a time. But it did provide a lot of time for people like Dogpack and Rosanna, or like I said, Rosanna Pansino, these other people to like make these videos with all these bold allegations, right? Because there's some very severe allegations. I mean, child labor, harassment, you know, the whole Chris Ava Tyson situation, how that involves the audience, the Delaware situation, child lotteries, you know, fake giveaways, all kinds of shit, right? There's all kinds of stuff. And it basically just gave time for all of this stuff to boil up, you know what I mean? It gave time for the soup on the fucking pot to really kind of cook, you know?
Yeah, if I could go back in time, I would do what we're doing here, because I assume this is like the correct format. It's going to be a little bit more free-flowing and natural, and I wouldn't have wasted so much time like trying to do a response. It's just not my thing. I like so much better, or I'm assuming, I mean, we just started, but I think I'm going to like so much better being asked the questions and answer it instead of just like sitting in a chair like this, answering it. It just feels a little more natural.
Now, he's going to say, oh, I would have, if I could, I would have went back in time and I would have made the video. I would have changed my reaction to all of this. The thing is, I think a lot of people were calling for him to respond at the time anyway. Now, I understand the rationale that he's going with here of we didn't want to foil the investigation. I get that. Trust me. I understand. But that's the problem with a lot of this internet shit. And it isn't even just really this MrBeast case. This goes for so many controversies. You got to think. I've made thousands of videos here on this channel. I've covered so many of these controversies from, you know, the back and forwards that happen. The issue is the court of opinion online is almost always going to see it as not maybe even necessarily an admission of guilt, but it looks really bad when you take a whole lot of time to respond. Now, obviously for people who you're going to think like, oh, well, people want to make a very concise response. They want to make a good response and address everything. I understand that, but the thing about the internet is everything is based on like, you know, this fucking quick. Everything is like a couple of seconds long. Every controversy usually only has like a day to go. This is one of those rare instances where like, because there's so many new allegations constantly being made that are like muddying up the fray, it just has lasted and been dragged out for so fucking long. But that's the thing about stuff like this. Hindsight obviously is 2020. You can think like in the moment, maybe I should wait to respond. Maybe I should piece together what I'm going to say first. Obviously this whole MrBeast shit, you know, it's not like a normal YouTube channel like mine where like, you know, it's basically just one person running everything. This is as MrBeast describes it, a company with hundreds of employees that is constantly contracting third parties and outside services. There's constantly millions upon millions of dollars on the line for everything that they do. This is a pretty big moving machine with a lot of very intricate parts that basically make everything up. But even then, right, he is willing to admit, like, I wish I'd have gotten a little bit more ahead of this, I think is probably where we're at here, right? Because, like I said, Dogpack and them, they kind of ran wild for a minute with these allegations simply because everyone was waiting on a response and there was none to come, so...
I thought, like, if you watch Soggy's video or any of these other videos that are coming out now showing all the discrepancies, I honestly thought a lot of people would find, like, the information proving the dishonesty earlier.
The Google...
Yeah, like, because a lot of this could have been, just figure out Google. A lot of this could, and now, I also have to be clear, like, I'm not perfect, and I'm not saying I've never done anything wrong, and you can't criticize me. Like, there are things I deserve criticism for, and I'm sure we'll get to some of those things in here, but there are a lot of things that are just not true, and, you know, on those things, like, I mean, we'll just get to it throughout this, because I'm sure you're going to ask me the questions, but there's just a lot of disinformation that was easily proved wrong. Like, the big one that, I mean, videos with tens of millions of views collectively, you know, claiming I called a guy Delaware because he committed a crime in Delaware. Like, you know, that is not true. His name was just Delaware. I didn't, you know, call him Delaware to make fun of him or anything. And, I mean, I'm sure you're going to ask about it later, but like, there's literally, he was in a video before I hired him working at Best Buy wearing a name tag that said Delaware. And like, that was public information. And like, you know, anyone could have saw that. And like, even during when that was like getting shared a lot a couple months ago, I even sent that to a couple of YouTubers. I was like, hey, just so you know, like, I didn't call him Delaware because of this messed up thing. Like, that was just his name, and here's proof. And I guess I probably shouldn't say the name of the creators, but like, one of them literally just said to me, like, well, it's not really cool to like you or defend you right now, so I don't really care whether or not it's true, or I don't want to take the video down because then people are going to think I'm controlled opposition. I was like, whoa.
Now, he claims a lot of the allegations, they could have been disproven earlier if people, you know, did more research or whatever. Or if you looked at this picture, or you looked at this video we did in the past, or you listened to my girlfriend on this podcast. Now, one of the things that he's going to reference here, and also throughout the video pretty frequently is a more recent video made by another YouTuber called Soggy Cereals. So Soggy Cereals made this video where he responds to the allegations that Dogpack made against MrBeast. You can think of him as like a third-party response to this whole thing, where he goes through, he looks at all these allegations that have been made, you know, and just kind of tries to systemically disprove them or provide evidence to the contrary or kind of counter the argument that's being made right now. MrBeast, like I said, he's going to reference this a lot throughout this video where he, you know, he'll make a sided comment like, well, you can look at Soggy Cereal's video where he disproves all of this stuff, or you can look at Soggy's video where he points out all this misinformation. Now, personally, I think this kind of misses the fundamental point of why, like, a lot of people were waiting for MrBeast to respond, like me. I mean, I made, like, the video talking about the initial allegations and then, like, the follow-up Lunchly controversy, right, when it kind of launched. But as far as making, like, a video every single day where, like, oh, this is the new allegation, right? Like, I was waiting for this moment, as were a lot of other people, to see MrBeast respond to these allegations, to see him kind of come at this head on, right? Where he addresses things and talks about it, like, right to the camera, right to everybody. It's nice that there's videos like Soggy's that try to, like, you know, clear up some of the things in this entire thing, but MrBeast also has to understand a lot of people just wanted to hear this shit come from him himself, right? It's one thing when, you know, it's a conversation of a bunch of people online, but you are the main focus of it, so I think that's what it really came down to. A lot of people were waiting to hear MrBeast finally make a statement or really kind of react. Now, of course, as he states in this video, he made, like, minor announcements like the IG post or whatever about, you know, how they source their cocoa, and then, of course, when they got the answers to the investigation, they publicized it. Yeah, this is true, but when there's so many different allegations, especially ones this seriously, you gotta kind of take the time to answer all of them, right? I mean, we're talking about child slave labor and, like, weird pedo-looking motherfuckers out here doing some weird shit involving minors that work for your company, right? Like, this is some pretty serious shit. It's not just like oh, MrBeast is using CGI in his videos, and that's like the bombshell. Now, he says, oh, I sent this proof to YouTubers. Apparently, one of them even replied and just basically said, I don't want the optics to look bad. I don't want to look like I'm defending MrBeast or being a MrBeast glazer. I'm not gonna cover this. I'd really like to know who a lot of these creators are that he worked with, or I shouldn't say worked with, but talked to in the background about this, right? Because when Soggy apparently made his video where he defends MrBeast, this is of course before MrBeast's statement that we're talking about, apparently MrBeast went around to a bunch of creators in, like, the private DMs and shit, and he, like, sent them this video by Soggy as, like, his defense or, like, his argument as to why all of these claims by Dogpack and shit are just, like, fraud or bullshit or whatever, right? Like I said, I'd like to know who these people are who are, like, I guess unfairly, quote-unquote, covering it according to MrBeast, where, like, they'll cover the allegations but, like, won't correct the story or whatever. Now, I get that this is a pretty intense situation, right? This is where, like I said, a lot of allegations being made are really serious, so it's a pretty hot-handed topic, but ultimately, man, when it comes down to it, obviously both sides have to be told. That's why I think a lot of people, like I said, waited on this response. But I would just like to know, because, like, this is a pretty serious claim in my opinion. Like, you're basically accusing YouTubers of, like, sacrificing their integrity, essentially, to lie against you or, like, defame you. I guess there's probably some legal implications to that. Maybe he can't name them outright, especially since, like we'll talk about later in this video, he's apparently planning to sue Dogpack over this entire situation, right? But that's kind of the problem with, like, some of this response is a lot of this shit is left pretty open-ended, you know? There's evidence for some things, there's a lot of shit that MrBeast says that makes sense, but there's also some things that, like, don't get touched upon enough, in my opinion. I'll wait to talk about those situations a little bit more individually. With that, let's go ahead and advance.
First off, to just set the foundation, I think a lot of people are saying, oh, of course, Jimmy did an internal investigation, found himself, you know, they didn't find any wrongdoing, which is also not true, which I assume we'll go into that more later. They did find some wrongdoing, just not in regards to, like, the serious Ava allegation. So that's a, you know, false truth. And then on top of that, it wasn't an internal investigation. It was an external investigation, which was clearly laid out in the things we showed.
Yeah, a third-party investigation.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I mean, it is a little bit of a, like, you know, a lot of people I saw were saying, like, well, you paid them. And it's like, well, yeah, top tier lawyers and federal prosecutors don't work for free, so I have to pay them.
Yeah.
So I don't really know how to debunk that one. I mean, it just is what it is.
Now, obviously, MrBeast has been criticized heavily over this investigation into his own company because obviously he's the one who hired the company to do it. So from the outside, a lot of the perspective is, oh, well, MrBeast hired his own company to do this. Therefore, it's not going to be a fair investigation into his company. He's got them on the payroll. They're going to say whatever he wants them to say. It's just going to be a wash, right? It's like the police investigating the police and saying that they did nothing wrong. Now, I guess MrBeast tries to clear this misconception up by stating it was a third-party company that was neutral. He hired them under the, impression that them basically doing this investigation would help him make his company better. It wouldn't be worth it for him to risk his company's reputation or for that company to risk their reputation by, basically frauding up the results of this investigation. I mean, it makes sense, but that's the problem with perspective in stories like this, right? Is there's so many massive allegations. There's just so much shit thrown into the stew pot, right? And everyone, I think, is just at the point where you're so inundated with fucking controversy after controversy in this whole thing. A lot of people have already made their minds up. A lot of people already think that one side's guilty or the other. They're not really going to change. And so there's always going to be that layer of skepticism where people are just going to be like, oh, of course it's bullshit. Now, MrBeast does provide the document results from the company where they're I guess giving the final results on everything that had to do with the company and whatnot. That is part of the Google Doc of evidence that MrBeast provided. I'll have that linked down below as well as the original video.
Diversity, I have seen a lot of people mention that about our company, which, I mean, that one's just not even true. Feastables, for example, a couple months old, but almost 70% of our company is women. We actually, because we do dub studios around the world, now zooming out of Feastables over to content, I mean, we actually have pretty crazy amount of diversity in our company. So because we have 400 people that work for me. It's not just me and the boys on the camera, which is the 5 you see. So that one, the few people have claimed that they don't have any data to back it up. So
Now, MrBeast also was accused of diversity issues in the hiring at his companies and whatnot. He claims, oh, Feastables has a 70% approximate female workforce. He's saying these people don't have evidence to provide that basically shows that they're discriminatory in hiring. He says people just don't understand the context of the company, how quickly the company's grown, how many people work for them now, what the company itself really is. And basically his point is that his company established this anonymous company hotline for employees to air out their grievances so that would improve the culture at the company and would help, weed out some of the concerns and problems that even the investigation found. But even then, I think that this is a little bit dismissive, right? Because, MrBeast, he kind of hinges his defense a little bit at some points on oh, well, the company's just grown so fast. I can't oversee every little detail. I can't, interfere in every personal relationship that happens in the company. It's hard for me with everything that I'm doing with my busy schedule to know when this shit's happening. And I understand what he's trying to say, but when you're being alleged of having a toxic workplace and a shitty culture, discriminatory hiring, all this other terrible shit, it's not really a good look to say that. Now, that's the problem, is he's explaining this as a business owner, as a billionaire basically, who runs a company with hundreds of employees. Obviously, the average person isn't that. So to them, they never experienced how tough it is to handle all these different dynamics. But at the bottom line, when you get down to brass tacks here, man, as the head of the company, as the face of the company, as basically the representative of the company to the outside world, it really is your duty and your obligation to make sure everything that's going on in-house is working correctly. That's the reason that these companies even exist in the first place. It's MrBeast. It's based on you. At the end of the day, when you have employees, when you're running a company, I get it, things get tough, they get hard and whatnot, but the buck stops with you. And if there's problems going on in the company that even third-party outside sources are able to find out, like harassment, ultimately it reflects on you whether or not you're personally involved, whether or not you're directly overseeing it or participating. It still falls back on you to a certain degree. Now, do I think that it makes, MrBeast the fucking Antichrist and he's coming from the depths of hell to kill everybody because of that? No. I think that it is, at best, a mistake that virtually every company that has more than 3 employees probably makes. But at worst, it's more or less just a cover up for, oh, we got caught doing bad shit. We got caught with our hand in the cookie jar, for lack of better terms. And this is just an excuse. You know what I mean?
Oh, I agree. That's a dumb thing to do.
Yeah.
I do think context matters, though, because like this is where a lot of these things that I assume we're going to talk about is like people conflate current MrBeast with 400 employees and spending hundreds of millions of dollars a year with MrBeast when he's a teenager and starting. I mean, when I first started hiring people, it was like, oh, we went to high school together. You want to help me make videos? And I hired a couple of my friends for high school. And then I was like, how do I do taxes and this kind of stuff? And I was like, Mom, help. And I mean, I wouldn't say she's head of HR. I mean, she was, I guess, but she's also running finance, and it's not like a real company. We just get in this like little $700 no, actually that one was $1,080 a month office I was renting, and I'd just be like to this one guy that I knew from high school, all right, today you're gonna go paint this thing. Today, you, friend number 2, you're gonna like help me edit this, and you, friend number 3, you're gonna go to the store and buy 1,000 chickens that like scream when you press down on them.
Now, at one point, his mother was the head of HR in his company. This was at apparently a pretty early stage and everything. It was when he was kind of growing quickly, growing rapidly. So he just kind of, I guess, shoehorned her into that position because she knew a little bit more than he did about everything. She probably was a little bit wiser or whatever. Now, he agrees that was a bad decision. I would have to agree that's never really a good idea. But apparently, that's just not how things are anymore now that it's a company of hundreds of employees and it's not basically him and his high school friends running everything anymore. But that's once again the issue. Like when you're the boss and like you're in this position where you oversee everything, the buck ultimately stops with you. And so when you hire in family members or people who would be biased into positions of accountability that are supposed to make sure that like basically you and the other employees are all checked to make sure that like nothing crazy's happening or anything violating is happening, right? It just can't be somebody that can draw back to you. You know what I mean? It always is just going to provide a bad example regardless. Like, even if this wasn't like a big deal being made and all these allegations where it's like, oh, Jimmy had his mom as the head of HR and he did it so that he could prevent anybody from speaking out against him, right? That's the problem, even putting yourself in this predicament in the first place by hiring family. The sad reality is, and this is a thing that I learned pretty early on, family and money don't mix well. You know what I mean? Blood and business probably shouldn't be intertwined too often, right? Now, it works for mom and pop diners sometimes or whatever, but this is a fast-growing, fast-approaching, new-age digital media company where virtually nobody inside of it besides MrBeast really has the experience that's necessary to keep this thing growing at that pace, right? So when you make hires like this and you put people in these situations, it just opens the door regardless for problems and for drama and controversy. Now, I get it. I understand how it feels to have like your business scale fast and you have to kind of react on the cuff to things. But I mean, that's just part of running a business and doing so effectively and correctly. Everyone learns. I get that. Everyone makes mistakes and they have to learn from it. But this is just one of those things that just added basically an untied shoelace to trip over that wasn't necessary.
So when we started hiring more people, I wrote this little, I almost like advice book just for a lot of employees because I wasn't able to talk with people as much as I was early on. And one part of it that people, when this thing got leaked, and I wrote it with some other people in my company, it wasn't just me, but when this got leaked, there's a section that said no does not mean no. And then they just like cropped that out and they're like, look, this is proof Jimmy's immoral and evil. When obviously, like you were saying, if you read the context below, it makes sense. The gist of why we had a section that said no does not mean no is because we do, I don't know if anyone's ever seen our videos, crazy things that have never been done before, right? No one's ever, on YouTube at least, buried themselves alive for 7 days. No one like tries to dangle an obstacle course from cranes. And it's like, the problem I kept running into early on when I was hiring people is I'd be like, hey, I want to do this. And then they would go call someone. So like, let's say the obstacle course in the sky where we had like this obstacle courses that Mac did held up by these cranes, weighed like 100,000 pounds or whatever. Like they would call crane companies and they'd be like, no. And then they'd be like, okay, hang up. And they'd come to me and they'd go, Jimmy, they said no, we can't do it.
So there was a lot of talk around this no doesn't mean no policy, right? And when you hear that out of context, obviously it sounds a little crazy because most people kind of took it as like they're teaching you to go against consent kind of thing, right? To say the loud part, not so quietly, right? Basically, we're at this point where, like I said, there's all these different allegations. Some of them are like really severe. Some of them are, like I said, child slave labor or like sexual misconduct, things like that. But then some of them is just shit like this, where it's like, realistically, wherever your mind is already made up on whether or not you like MrBeast, that's where this is gonna fall. Now, when I hear he had like in his company motto, right, or whatever, like company documents, no doesn't mean no. I would never just assume like, oh, he's trying to teach them all to be like non-consenters. That just doesn't really logically compute or make sense. And obviously, this is just one of those like fringe examples of an allegation or like a point being made where it's like, it's kind of just an easy win for MrBeast, because honestly, nobody in their right mind is going to be thinking that like, this is where this is going. You know what I mean? That would just be not only contextually nonsense compared to like what they're doing as a company, but like, why would he put himself in that predicament? It just doesn't make sense. There's no reason for that. And like the explanation of like, it's basically just teaching them to go beyond the line of like resolving issues with potential customers or clients, you know? I obviously don't think it was some evil statement meant for people to like become bad if they work for MrBeast. This is just one of those things where, you know, MrBeast, it just vindicates him when he talks about it a little bit, because even if there are things that MrBeast did wrong and there's things to critique him for, this is just one of those like just nonsensical points where realistically, like if you think about it for more than 5 seconds, there's just no reason why this would even be a problem. So
like, also, we rarely use it. Like, I mean, maybe like 0.1% of my shots. Like if we have like a background that like doesn't look too cool, like it's just like black, but it looks a little off, we'll just like darken it out in post. Like that's like majority of what we do, or sometimes we'll extend a set. But I was thinking like, when we do, because bro, we pour millions of dollars into these videos. We build massive sets. Like we go through so much links to make these huge videos. And the last thing I want is people to be like questioning whether or not things are CGI. I mean, like the sets we build are fucking crazy, man. Like it's wild. Like you should come see the like behind the scenes of it. I mean, sometimes we spend 100 days just literally building one room for one shot of one video.
That's insane.
So addressing the CGI claims, because this is another one of the points that like Dogpack made in his expose videos, is like, oh, MrBeast's entire content is fake. It's all bullshit. It's all a facade. Here's part of the reasons why. Now, there's many reasons provided why MrBeast is putting on a front, according to Dogpack, but one of them is the use of CGI in the videos, more specifically an example where they were talking about a hospital that wasn't actually there, and like the CGI version of the hospital looked new, and apparently people thought that MrBeast built it or whatever, and therefore it was misleading because the CGI was like really convincing. And then there was another example of like an explosion being kind of touched up on and like kind of, you know, fixed with CGI. Now, when it comes to CGI usage, especially when it comes to charity content, I think that there's a pretty fine line. Now, MrBeast claims that like we barely use CGI in our content. We only use it in specific examples like the explosion where we're just trying to touch things up. He admits that the CGI hospital thing was like a misstep. Apparently, he talked to the editor team when it happened. Once again, this is just something you got to kind of take his word for it, right? There's no real evidence that he talked to these people. There's no real evidence that he had an issue with it when it happened. You just have to take his word for it. That's what a lot of this whole defense of MrBeast is kind of set up on. You just got to take his word for it as a business owner or whatever, right? But like to circle back, there's a fine line when it comes to this kind of shit in these types of YouTube videos. Now, as far as an explosion being like color corrected and having some flare details added to it or whatever to make the explosion look more realistic and vibrant or whatever, honestly, I just don't really give a fuck about that, you know? Because to me, that's not like actually full deceptive, like crazy, where you're really misleading people about what you're doing and your intentions. That's just like editing and effects that anybody doing content or doing Hollywood or anything would do, right? If I was making videos like that, I would also color correct them and add effects and stuff, right? That's just part of the process. But if it comes to the point where like you're CGIing in hospitals and people think like, oh shit, that's what they're building, or oh shit, that's what they built. Look at MrBeast, he's doing good things. That's different. If you're using CGI to make the video more appealing and entertaining, that's fine. If you're using CGI misleadingly to make it like, oh, this is how good we are, this is what we're really doing, and this is the effort of our charities, right? That's a problem. Now, MrBeast claims it wasn't like an intentional thing to mislead people with the CGI hospital. He didn't want to mislead people into thinking like they built that or were putting that up or whatever, but that's the issue when you got a company like this, man, and you have 100 fucking editors working on your shit, right? It's really hard to actually hone what you want done down, you know what I mean? You're filtering filtering your instructions or your vision through dozens of people and you're hoping that they can replicate the results. It's never going to happen the way that you want it to. But once again, this is something that you just kind of have to take MrBeast's word for it on, right? So
yes, Sagi's video, he talked about this and uncovered it. I'm surprised more people didn't. Like, my girlfriend after that video literally went on a podcast and described this, so it's not even like this was hidden information. This has been out there.
You were in the video 100 girls versus 100 boys for $500,000.
Yes.
Now this 100 boys, 100 girls video, it was one of the massive controversial videos that have kind of sparked a lot of this whole debate. But according to MrBeast, I don't want to say he outright admits to like quote unquote rigging it or adding people that he knows into it, because he tries to provide context of like what was going on. So apparently, since it was during COVID and there was the whole quarantining thing, he thought it was appropriate to just fill in the people who couldn't make it with people from his company and like his girlfriend and whatnot. He says that it wasn't rigged, everyone had their own free will, and that's that. Now, once again, the thing is, we're having to base all of this on taking MrBeast's word for it. Now, it is true that it lines up, like, with COVID being out and being a big deal at that time, and like the whole quarantining thing being a massive deal. That all lines up with the production of that video and whatnot around that like time frame or whatever. But even then, like, there's obviously so many different MrBeast videos where shit like this is basically possible, where you could just insert people and, run with it and rig it or whatever. Right now, this is one of those things that could really just be either way. It could be true that he actually was rigging this and he got caught and just found a convenient excuse, or he could just be telling the truth. I mean, realistically, like, there's anecdotal evidence that suggests on his behalf that he's right. But once again, that's just like anecdotal or circumstantial evidence where it doesn't definitively prove that all of his videos aren't rigged, or maybe not even that some of them are rigged, right? It's just one of those things where if you believe MrBeast wouldn't lie to you about this, or you believe he'd tell the truth to appease everybody, you can take it at face value. But the issue with a lot of his response is that for people who are actually dead set against him, they still have at least a little bit of wiggling room to just be like, oh no, he's lying, here's why. He can't provide any solid evidence, he's lying, he's evil.
I don't want to just like speculate. I have a team looking into it. I don't think we did though. But regardless, just to be truthful, if people want a refund or think for whatever reason, like we did something wrong, like I'll send you a link that you can just put in the description where they can get a refund. Maybe just throw it on the screen here.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean.
Now, apparently he's investigating all this illegal lottery talk. Now, honestly, I think at this point he should have addressed way better. And honestly, I don't even know if he could have addressed it way better without just outright admitting that there is some fault in the whole MrBeast scheme or whatever that happened there, where they could have been more clear about details. I mean, he is offering, refunds to people who felt that they were wronged, or refunds to people who, they felt like they were scammed by MrBeast throughout this entire thing. That is part of this entire response or whatever, is to offer those refunds. But ultimately, like, when it comes to the claim of, like, they weren't very transparent about the no purchase necessary part, where they'd only put, like, small phrases like no per neck, to, like, technically meet legal guidelines to say shit like that, but it's not full outright like, hey, no purchase is necessary to enter this, right? Because obviously there's legalities on what you can do when it comes to running, lotteries and giveaways and shit. And truthfully, I don't think MrBeast followed it to the degree that he should have, right? And these are things that are plainly laid out in the law that he could have been more clear about, he could have been more fair on, but he wasn't. And instead of admitting like, hey, I could have been more clear about the no purchase necessary clause, or hey, maybe we did handle things wrong and I'm sorry, we could write it. It feels like he just kind of uses the, oh, well, you can get a refund if you feel like you had a problem with it. It feels like that kind of deflects away from the real issue, right? Now, I'm not saying that it means nothing, because at least he is offering refunds. That is a good thing. But I mean, it isn't hard to just be like, yeah, we could have been more clear in the marketing. We could have been more clear about what we were doing. We could have, maybe followed the guidelines a little closer. I don't think that necessarily puts him legally like liable territory or anything right there, just saying that. I figure he probably should have, because this is also a pretty serious point. This is involving the law, so.
Agreed. Like we talked about before, I have hundreds of employees, and when we brought the outside third party in and, I was like, hey, talk to whoever you need to, get an honest pulse of how some people are feeling. There were some things that, people hadn't made us aware of that they, felt more comfortable talking to Quinn and Manuel on, which is obviously ultimately why we ended up, doing the anonymous hotline and that kind of stuff. And, what you asked, what did we do? How did we handle it? like I said before, it's just whatever they told me. If they told me like I need to fire someone, we fired them. Like I mean, it's not like I don't want to be the arbiter of truth. I want people who are professional in these things to get the information, make sure they have all the facts, and I want them to tell me what to do, right? Because obviously I work with these people, and so I could have some form of bias or whatever, or maybe I like this person better, and so I like to stay away from that kind of stuff.
Now, one of the things that the investigation did find that MrBeast's company had a problem with was workplace harassment and like culture issues, basically. He says he was ready to fix it like right when he found out this entire thing was happening. That's the reason why he wanted this investigation to be so thorough and to make sure was that, so like basically he could fix the problems in the company as he needed to. Now, this is one of the things where he did kind of just outright open up and admit like, yeah, this is where we got caught. This is what we did wrong. So I'll give him credit for admitting like, yeah, we were in the wrong. We were found liable here for this, but once again he kind of uses this defense of like oh well, right when I found out about it I was ready to take care of it, but up until then I just couldn't know because of all these different things going on with the business. There's just too many relationships and dynamics to know 100% what's going on. Like, yeah, that is technically true, but once again, you're the face of the brand, you're the guy it has to answer for everything. When shit like this is going on, it's just kind of on you, and you got to take care of that shit, man. That's part of running a business. So
well, there's tons of examples of him intentionally manipulating things to not be true and posting it online. Tons and tons and tons of that. Soggy has basically an hour and 27-minute video, and an hour of it is just flat out proving manipulation and lies, and caused a lot of harm to my businesses. I mean, I've literally had people pull out millions of dollars and then tell me it was directly because of his video. And don't worry, I instantly was like, can you send that in writing? So if I win a case or anything, I can directly point damages. No reason why. And so, I mean, it's just unfortunate. Like, I don't want to be put in this situation, but...
So this is obviously one of the big parts of the video that people were looking forward to, was basically, is MrBeast going to take legal action against Dogpack 404? Now, he basically says, yeah, he says I don't want to do it. I don't want to be put in this position, but I kind of have to. Now, the reason why is apparently he claims that Dogpack 404 putting out all these allegations, kind of spearheading this campaign where people started shitting on MrBeast and providing all of these allegations, right? He alleges that business partners pulled millions of dollars worth of money out of business deals from MrBeast's company because of all of the ruckus around all of this. Now, the thing about this is if he does plan on suing Dogpack, obviously in court, he's going to have to prove pretty substantially that all of this talk, all of this shit from Dogpack, which he claims is misinformation and it's lies and it's disprovable, he's going to have to prove in court that that is true. That's all bullshit and that MrBeast is vindicated from these lies. Now, if he can do so and he can accurately provide proof that it really did cost a specific dollar amount, like millions of dollars in damages, truthfully, Dogpack might really be fucked here. Now, the thing about this, like I said, it's really something you have to prove. In these kinds of lawsuits, it's not just he said, she said YouTube drama where somebody makes a YouTube video, everyone's on their side for 24 hours. Someone makes a YouTube video, everyone's on their side for 24 hours. This is the court of law where a judge is going to rule on it. This is going to, affect the outcome probably of someone's life. Let's be real, because Dogpack is not some massive fucking billionaire. He's not some dude with a company that can defend itself in court. He's a guy on YouTube making these allegations, making these videos, talking about all this shit, creating all of this controversy by talking about it, right? And so, when you're going up against a company like MrBeast's, which is working with fucking Amazon and all these other companies, right? It's kind of hard to beat them in court, especially when it comes to shit like this, where honestly, I'm sure MrBeast has accountants and people who can do all the math and do all the numbers and get all the evidence. And if that's the case, I mean, Dogpack could be in some real trouble. Now, in regards to the PR of suing the guy, MrBeast basically says he's damned if he does, damned if he doesn't, because everyone already sees him as guilty now, before he responded. And if he doesn't sue him after all these allegations, he's already taken this reputation tank. But if he does sue him for harming his business or whatever, now everyone uses it as like MrBeast is silencing the opposition. He's silencing his critics in court. Now, my thing is, if this is all really baseless accusations, this guy's just making this shit up to try and make money off Mr. Beast or whatever. If he does get beat in court and like the proof is very convincing, then that is what it is, you know? That's how the law works. I mean, who am I to argue with the fucking law? I'm not a judge. I'm not a lawyer, right? I'm a YouTuber. So if it is provable in court and he can really win this lawsuit, I mean, Dogpack might be a little bit in over his head, you know, because I don't know anyone who has the money to deal with that kind of shit, right? So that's the nasty reality of shit like this. And it's also just a little side note here. People, you know, in the comments of my videos when I talk about these allegations, they hate the way that I phrase things sometimes, where I say things like, this person is alleged to have, or this person is accused of, right? They'll go, oh, why don't you just say they did it? Why don't you just say that they're guilty? Because legally, if I come out and make statements like that, I'm putting myself at legal risk of being fucked with by people, of having people sue me and fuck with me. Even if I'm right, even if I'm, you know, actually telling the truth, they can still hold you up in court and fuck with you, right? So as a precaution, you kind of have to watch how you say things, what you say, what claims you make, what evidence you have to back those up, because this is still shit that will affect you in the real world. Like, someone gets a crawl up their ass and they fucking sue you, that's a different headache you don't want to deal with, man. It's no longer YouTube drama. Now, speaking of YouTube drama, one of the things that MrBeast alleges is that a subreddit called r/YouTube drama, which is a popular place where people talk about, you guessed it, YouTube drama, he claims that as people started to kind of like speak out against Dogpack 404 and Rosanna Pansino and these people and basically defend MrBeast and like tear down the points that they've made, he is alleging that the moderators at YouTube Drama have been unfairly like deleting posts and kicking people out of the subreddit for basically making these posts trying to disprove what Dogpack and them are saying. He provided like 6 or 7 pages of screenshots in the follow-up Google Doc, which, like I said, is linked down below if you want to read through that, of posts that basically were deleted and whatnot, right? And he's basically accusing here, right, of like, well, they're censoring people who are trying to tell the truth, who are trying to vindicate me and, you know, prove that I'm correct because it gets clicks, it gets views, it gets attention. They want to see me fail. Honestly, I'm not much of a Reddit guy, so I don't know much about like this specific subreddit and its dealings, but just figured I'd add that in there. I feel like it's a little bit of important context, so.
When in reality, which is what I told Coffee in that statement we gave him, it was managed by a fund. So I wasn't the one managing the wallet. You know, I've never had access to that wallet. I've never done the buying and selling on that wallet. There's a actual professional who's written books on crypto and lived and breathes crypto every second of the day managing it. So most of the allegations there like are just answered by like, I am too stupid to do that. That's why a fund was managing it. You know what I mean? And yeah, I mean, like Coffee said, like if he literally said this in a video. If you like Jimmy, then you're like, yeah, he has answers for everything and this checks out. And if you don't like Jimmy, then you're going to go, you know, there's obviously wrongdoing here. But yeah, I mean, the honest truth is like, I make videos, I'm running 7 businesses, I got a lot going on. And yeah, I invested in a crypto fund, they invested on my behalf, and I've never like had access to that wallet. They're the one doing the buying and selling. I mean, there are thousands of transactions on there. Like, I don't even have that kind of time.
Now, another massive allegation was like the crypto misconduct, which he just talked about here, right? It feels like every YouTuber at this point has been hit with some sort of crypto misconduct where they're either rug pulling people or creating shit coins and scamming them, right? We've seen it time and time again. Now, MrBeast's defense for like his crypto misconduct allegations is he doesn't manage his own crypto wallet. He has a firm that does it for him. They do the investing for him. They handle everything. He's too busy, right? He's making MrBeast videos and focusing on his craft. He doesn't have time to manage his own investments and deal with them, right? Now, me personally, I manage all of my own investments. I don't, you know, deal with another firm who does all my shit for me. Obviously, I'm not MrBeast, so there's probably a difference in our work schedules, but obviously, he has to have some access to it, right? Like, it's his money. I'm certain that if he calls these guys up and is like, hey, this is what I want to do, get it done, they'll probably get it done for him. So I feel like he's embellishing a little bit when he acts like, oh, I have no control over all that. I have no control over my crypto control. It feels like that's probably not true. Like, this is a guy who's a billionaire. He is very successful in business and finance. I honestly don't buy that some firm just has some shit that he can't touch that they're doing for him.
Your philanthropic efforts for Beast Philanthropy, your 501.
I've seen a lot of people ask about that too. So for the Beast Philanthropy, anyone can audit our books. We pass audit every year, and we make those things public. Also, I actually called CoffeeZilla like 9 months ago, and I asked him to do a video where he like broke down, maybe it was 9 months ago, I don't know the exact month, but like break down Beast Philanthropy and try to find anything fraudulent in there, because we're super anal about every penny spent on the charity. So I would, if anyone wants to do a deep dive on our charity, I would love that.
Now he says, I called CoffeeZilla, asked him to break down Beast Philanthropy, prove it's legit. I invite anyone to audit my books. You can go through all the public reports. You can find out we're a legit charity. We're really working. He says, I lose money in certain instances doing this, like philanthropy stuff, like on the main channel and in content. I lose a bunch of money. We offset it through other company ventures like Feastables. The company's going to lose money this year. Now, honestly, I kind of wish he would sit down and talk to CoffeeZilla, because I'll talk about this a little bit later in the video when I'm doing like my other points outside of responding to these points, but it feels like Oompa in this video did not push back enough against MrBeast. He did not follow up a lot of MrBeast's responses. He didn't criticize anything really that he said. He didn't dig any deeper. He didn't try to like push back against any claims that MrBeast made. He kind of just let MrBeast talk. Now, like I said, I'll talk more about that, but I feel like this would have been one of those points where, like, you know, CoffeeZilla probably would have been able to handle this one better, because I feel like he would have pushed back more. Now, if CoffeeZilla does go through it, that would be nice, you know, to just like prove, it's all legit or whatever. Honestly, like I said in the initial video talking about this, I don't believe that he's faking all of his philanthropic endeavors. I don't, like, for the 100 wells in Africa. I believe he built 100 wells in Africa, because that's one of those things where it's pretty disprovable, you know? Like, you say, I built 100 village wells or whatever here in this spot in Africa. And then the people in Africa are just like, hey, you built 5, right? And they show the video and they prove it, right? It's one of those things where, like, it's a real world impact. So, like, it's a little bit more verifiable, I feel like.
The charity we were working with was supposed to release the funds to him afterwards to pay for it. There's a little bit of a misunderstanding. They didn't get it. So we ended up paying for like 970, and like I didn't know of this, but like that little misunderstanding never got taken care of. So then the charity that did the 30 surgeries made a video saying, hey, you know, we didn't get paid. Somehow that never ended up on my radar for 8 months, which is honestly crazy. I don't know how no one sent that to me. We obviously had no knowledge of it. And then I saw it a couple weeks ago and I was like, whoa, I instantly called the team we were working with and I was like, what's going on here? And then we looked through it all, blah, blah. And then I was just like, I just paid them. So I actually double paid for those surgeries and just paid them separately. Obviously just a little misunderstanding.
Now, apparently there was some sort of mishap paying the company who did the surgeries on these people. He says he instantly called him when he found out. He paid him when he found out. He made sure he righted the wrongs that were done. But, you know, it's a misunderstanding. He didn't understand how it got crossed up in the first place. You know, no logical reason to try and short the company of payment, risk the reputation of the company to save a couple dollars compared to what they'd already spent on all the rest of it. Now, I understand what he's saying. I gotta agree, as someone who runs my own business too, it really doesn't make sense to try and, you know, risk your whole reputation for a 2% discount. But once again, this is one of those things where, like, you know, it's bad press on your company. The other people, they came out and said, hey, we weren't paid. And when you're the face of the company, you have to deal with these things. And it feels like MrBeast sometimes is like, almost thinks that it's unfair, where it's like, oh, well, I didn't know about it initially, so I'm not at fault. But it's like, once again, you're the head of the company, you're the guy who makes all the calls, you're the big shot. This shit still falls back on you, even if it is your employees failing and they're fucking up, because as the business owner, your employee conduct is a reflection of you. So that's just the way that it is. I'm not saying that because I have some hatred for MrBeast or anything. I'm saying that because it's reality. And anyone who owns a business knows that that's true.
No one criticizes it. It's like, oh, this is a good video to watch it. And then I'll do a video where I build 100 houses. Everyone loses their mind, you know, and give it to homeless people. And Twitter erupts. And so using philanthropy as a shield, honestly, I just don't even agree. Like, I actually think it paints a negative spotlight on me, to be frank.
So he says, I don't use charity content to deflect criticism. He says that it actually puts a bigger target on his back. Now, this is one of the points where I will say, like, I actually pretty fully agree with him, because obviously MrBeast has always gotten shit for doing, like, philanthropic videos. I've made videos even before the controversy even started, where, you know, people would, like, you know, shit on the guy for, like, once again, curing people's blindness or building wells in Africa. And it is one of those things where, like, when you do it, yes, it does put a little bit of a target on your back, because people always assume the worst. So I get what he's saying here, I really do. He claims that if he wanted to stop getting criticism and stop getting hate, he would just stop helping people. I mean, I get what he's saying. Honestly, this is probably one of his better points, in all reality, in this response. But
yeah, that one was a crazy one when I woke up and saw those videos claiming I used slave labor, which... What's funny is any of those creators, I'm just going to say it, you could have just literally messaged me and I could have given you the facts, but, you know, they didn't. And so that was like a crazy few days. Like, I actually, before I go into how we do ethically source our cocoa, and these are just flat out lies, I even, there's so many arcs of like allegations, that allegation arc, I even put out an Instagram story about how we ethically source our cocoa. And we even did a press release, and like I've like literally shared these things. And people still were claiming we use slave labor and just ignored it. And
now, this is probably one of the worst controversies, honestly, like one of the worst accusations, basically being accused of, in the Feastables chocolate bars, using cocoa that was unethically sourced through things like child slave labor in Africa, right? That's a pretty fucked up thing to be accused of no matter what. I mean, it's one thing where it's like, oh, your YouTube videos are fake, or you use too much CGI, to being like, you're literally exploiting children and, you know, getting them fucking enslaved for chocolate. That's two different things. So he claims that 100% of their cocoa is from fair trade certified sources. They've started working with a company called Tony's that helps them ensure that that's the case. That was after they switched from their supplier in Peru when they initially started the brand, which obviously also the company or the plants and farms that they used from Peru, these were also ethically sourced, so there was no slave labor. He did provide some photos also in the follow-up document that's once again linked down below, where it shows him on farms in like Ghana and places like this, basically teaching the farmers and like working with them and directly supervising them. He claims that the company like once again directly supervises the farms. Sometimes they pay a premium to the farmers to make sure that they have no financial incentive to use child slave labor and to make sure that they're successful. Once again, one of those things where you kind of have to just hope he's not lying. Honestly, I think that he's not lying on this one because, once again, it's one of those things that would just blow up his career and ruin everything if, like, it was found out that, yeah, this whole thing was happening and it was real. It's just one of those bullets that you don't need to put yourself in the way of to dodge. You know what I mean? Just don't put yourself in the way of it and it won't happen. This is such a controversial thing that I do truly think he would stay away from it, so I am willing to give him the benefit of the doubt on this one. But like I said in previous points here, like if you're already against MrBeast or whatever, or you've already made your mind up, it's just one of those things. It's like one of the million bad things being said that all add up to this gigantic bad picture of the guy, right? So
there was no recall. I mean, that's been said, which again, it's like, it's so annoying. It's the disinformation, man, because that makes it seem like there's an actual serious problem. Oh, we're recalling Lunchleys, and there's a sign that, you know, I think Logan even did a video, if you want to throw up, where he like went to the store and that just wasn't real. That like someone put on like a door that said Lunchley has been recalled when the shelves are empty by the FDA, which was just a made up thing. Yeah, on the mold thing, here's the thing. We, every single Lunchley with cheese meat is USDA inspected. There is no mold when it leaves our factory. Yeah. Like we have the highest QC standards imaginable. Like, what do we have? Why would we ship that out? Like that doesn't even make sense. You know what I mean? And we obviously have the best experts in the world. I mean, even once these things come out, I mean, we brought even more. They're pouring up and down the lines, making sure everything's good. It's just...
So there was this rumor going around that Lunchley was being recalled due to the whole mold controversy. I've already talked about that and made a video about that, but he claims that that was a lie. There is no actual recall on the product. Apparently, he also claims that everything is already USDA inspected and that these mold issues must have happened outside of their control, you know, whether it be in the truck or whether it be in the store, not being properly refrigerated, or an employee fucked up somewhere along the line, which it is possible that he's right about that, but it's one of those things where like the product had literally just launched, people were trying to do reviews on it, like it was the first impression of the company, and the first impression of the company is one where, yeah, people are getting fucking moldy products and whatever. Now, realistically, it also happened at the worst possible timing with all this other shit going on, but apparently, you know, all these mold issues only happened in a couple out of millions of units that we've already shipped. Which, yeah, that's true, but also at the same time, this is the thing about going into like the food industry and whatnot, right? It's no longer YouTube videos where, you know, it's like, oh, this person makes good or bad videos. Now you're dealing with shit that can harm people. It's affecting their nutrition. It's affecting their bodies. You still have to try and make sure, obviously, that everything is perfect when it's leaving your facilities. He claims that it was, but that's the problem, is it's being marketed as like this healthy alternative to Lunchables. It's this great premium product, but the image of the product is already being tainted by the mold controversy and everything else. Like, you almost can't blame people for being like, oh, what the fuck, right? Because that's just something that shouldn't be happening. And whether or not it's in MrBeast's control, it's just one of those things where you're affiliated with the company, man. It's your product. Ultimately, you're the one who answers to everything. And like when shit like this happens, people are going to be like, hey, what the fuck?
And I'm excited to put it out there because I think what people are envisioning is completely different than what actually happened. Yes, I did hire him, but for the context around it, I hired him when I was 19, so I was a teenager, and this is kind of leans a little bit into what we were talking before. This is back when it was just a couple of my friends from high school, my mom. My videos were getting bigger. I needed more help, and so I walked in because I'm dumb. Like, I probably should have gone on some site and hired people who had production experience, but instead I walked into my local Best Buy and I just hired multiple people. Obviously, when I was a teenager, I didn't know what a background check was. And I just hired a couple people there that wanted to help me make videos. One of them was the person named Delaware. And no, I did not know he was a registered sex offender. There's a rumor that's gone around that said that he sat me and my mom down and told us. Obviously, I don't remember that happening. And when I read that tweet, the first thing I did was I called my mom and I was like, hey, this is like 7 or 8 years ago. Just put this in context. 7 or 8 years ago, not indicative of my company today, but I was like, did this happen? Because someone's claiming this happened. My mom said, I would have literally quit or honestly probably shut the business down before I ever let my teenage son hire a registered sex offender knowingly.
Hired a few people. That was part of his strategy when he was like growing really rapidly. One of those people happened to be Delaware, and he didn't do any background checks. It was a bad idea to not do background checks, he claims, but that's the reason why this all happened. And when he found out, that he was a bad guy or whatever, that's when he got fired. He claims that not only, did he like not know basically that this guy was who he was, but he says that the rumor saying that he did know is untrue. He also says that his mother doesn't remember anyone knowing that he was an RSO. Once again, you have to just take MrBeast's word on this one. There's no real proof because obviously the mom's not in the room to say it herself. We don't have a phone call where she's like, oh yeah, I don't remember that happening or anything. We just have to hope that this guy wouldn't do that right now. I'm inclined to believe that he did just hire the guy from Best Buy, considering he did have like the evidence of the guy in a shirt for a Best Buy uniform that says Delaware on the name tag. But even then, it's like you didn't do the background check. You hired a pretty fucking dangerous person in to work for you. And as a result, you're being scrutinized for it. And that's the thing. He says that, I get it. It was a bad decision, but I just kind of, was learning how to run my business or like learning how to grow it or whatever. And sure, but at the same time, you're still responsible for those decisions. You're still responsible for the things that you do when you don't know the right way. And unfortunately, you can still be scrutinized and called out for things that you do when you're ignorant of the consequences or what's happening, right? And a lot of this is based on, oh, I didn't know, from MrBeast. That's his defense for a lot of things is I didn't know. When I did know, I found out and I figured it out, but I didn't know up until a certain point. And yeah, you didn't know up until a certain point, but still, man, what happened, and that's still a problem.
We built a room in our studio, and then the challenge was every day you live in this room, you win $10,000. And then it was like kind of like a white padded room. There's like a pool table, a bed in there, bunch of other items, blah, blah. And how do I want to say? I think the best way to talk about this is to also talk about how we did similar videos with other people. Because one of the things is like multiple people can do the same thing and experience it differently. That's what's a little tricky about these like contestant-based videos. I can never know 100% how something's going to affect someone, right? So similar to the Weddle video, I just want to lay the foundation before we go in specifically to that. Similar to that, we also did a video where we put did you see the video where we put two people in a room, Bailey and Susie, 100 days trapped together? So one thing that Weddle struggled with was the lights being on, and he mentioned that in the video. But Bailey and Susie, on day 20 of 100 Day Trapped Together, I offered to turn the lights off for part of their prize pool, and they said no.
Now, in response to Jake Weddle and the allegations of war crimes with the lights and everything in the one video production, he says, oh, we can't fully predict how everyone's going to react to everything. That's why we give people the ability to quit. We can't predict their boundaries or what they can handle, so we let them leave at any time, and they decide basically if they want to be a part of it. Now, this is true, but at the same time, there's been a lot of allegations from, like prior videos all the way up even until this whole Beast Games thing with Amazon, right? Where there was a lot of allegations of like workers being weird to the people on set and like, people not getting medication handed out when they needed it properly and stuff like that. And these things are just inexcusable regardless, And some of these things didn't even really get talked about or brought up in this response. There are a few things that just kind of feel like they got swept under the radar, or they were more defended in the guise of like, oh, well, you can just watch Soggy's video where he dissects all of this and disproves it. He says his goal isn't to harm people mentally, but we want to create a challenging environment and whatnot so that they can thrive in it or choose to leave. And I get it because he's filming challenges and stuff like that for YouTube, but even then there are still some serious stuff that have happened, right? There are some things that should be addressed and talked about and apologized for or remedied in at least some way, right? Now he says he gave Jake Weddle $50,000 like off camera and whatnot to make sure that he was financially stable after the challenge. And kind of like I said earlier, this is one of those things on like the wide spectrum of allegations and points being made where it just sits somewhere like towards the middle. It's easy to kind of overshadow with all the other allegations, but also it's one of those things where it just builds up into everything else, right? It's one of those points that kind of just dissolves back into everything else. So basically, that's all of the response, right, from MrBeast. That's what he's had to say about everything. And so now I just kind of want to wrap all this up with some final points here. So like I mentioned earlier in the video, I feel like Oompaville, despite his claim of I'm not a hard-hitting journalist, you know, I think he was a bit too passive during this discussion, and ultimately, I question if this was the right person to do this whole thing with in the first place. Now, the rationale was that Oompaville had on Dogpack on the channel and talked to him, so the fair, I guess, thing to do was also to talk to MrBeast on the same channel. I get that, but Oompaville, like I said, didn't push back. He didn't provide any, like, criticism to the points being made. He didn't really, like, make MrBeast elaborate or go more into detail. He kind of just accepted every answer for what it is, and even if MrBeast would throw back, like, a pretty defensive or a even weak argument at times, he would just kind of let it go. He kind of just let it sweep under the rug, you know, oh, well, let's move on to the next question, or he would just kind of like agree right along with it. The conversation was dominated entirely by MrBeast, and I think that was part of the point, was like to let him talk, but at the same time, you have to also, in fairness, bring up like at least some sort of opposition to the point, so they're not just saying whatever they feel they can say to win the argument or win over the hearts of everybody and make weak points. You got to make sure that they're staying there, they're giving the real answers, and they're really, you know, not trying to wiggle their way out of things. But some of this shit was just pushover points where MrBeast is basically, it's like, it's assumed he's telling the truth instead of just like him providing an argument as to why he's telling the truth, and then the viewer decides. It's just, oh, well, I mean, obviously I wouldn't do that because it would harm my reputation. Or, oh, well, I didn't know about that, but then once I found out about it, I did something about it. But I mean, I didn't know anything about it. So it's like on points like that, there should be a little more pushback where it's like, hey, but at the end of the day, you're still responsible. You're still the one in charge. That's why this criticism is valid or it's being brought up, right? And then also, too, MrBeast, like, this is a small point, like this isn't the fucking, like the nail in the coffin, but MrBeast like puts his foot up on the table during the interview, and it's like a very subtle power play where it's like he came to Oompa's house, he's putting his feet up on Oompa's table, he's walking over Oompa in this conversation, he's using Oompa's platform as a way to respond to all of this shit. It just made me and a lot of other people in the audience feel like Oompa didn't handle this with like the backbone that needed to be handled with, right? And honestly, you know, the whole foot in the table thing, like that's kind of disrespectful in my opinion. Like I would never, even to like my friend's house, I wouldn't just go to my friend's house and put my fucking shoes up on his table, right? Like I barely do it at my own house with my own table that I pay for, right? Like why would I go do that at anyone else's house? But I just kind of also want to talk about the three big defenses that MrBeast kind of hinged back on a lot, right? So number one, why would I do insert allegation if I'm trying to be successful and keep my image? The issue is it makes sense in certain instances, like, yeah, why would MrBeast shoot himself in the foot like this? But problem is, you're being accused of these things. There's been circumstantial or, you know, big evidence brought up to make a lot of these allegations. Yeah, why would I do it? Does make sense, but also disprove it fully. You know, go the extra mile, bring the evidence, bring the hammer home, really prove why it's not real. Because even in the instances where it does work, when you're using it in the more shaky moments where it's like, and now it feels like you're just getting defensive, it kind of makes the actual legitimate usage of it look weak. And it's the same thing with like constantly kind of falling back to Soggy's video, right? Where it's like, oh, well, you can look at Soggy's video and it disproves all this misinformation. Or if you look at Soggy's video, it makes a lot of points as to why this isn't real. Like I said, it's great that Soggy made the video talking about it the way that he did. And he brought up like a lot of very good counterpoints and like a lot of really decent arguments and whatnot. But also, we're here to watch you. We're here to watch the head of the company tell us the inside scoop on why all this shit isn't real. if you were just going to use Soggy's video as a defense for the entire thing, you might as well have just left it at that. And then also the third one, falling back on like the argument of ignorance, like, oh, I didn't know that was going on, and then when I did, I fixed it and figured it out, right? I didn't know that this person was a registered sex offender. I didn't know that hiring my mom to be the HR head was going to be a bad thing in hindsight. I didn't know that so many people would criticize me for this and for that. I didn't know that Ava Chris Tyson was a fucking lunatic for the several years that they worked at my company and were making all these weird jokes with kids and had Shadman posters up. I didn't really know why the Shadman thing was all put up on there anyway. I didn't buy it. Chris Ava Tyson did. They're responsible. You know, it's like you're just constantly arguing the point of ignorance. And it's like at a certain point, it just kind of comes off as like that's the default getaway. You know, like, oh, I just didn't know what was going on. And if you're really that unaware about so many looming problems in the company that have been brought out into public light and people are making these accusations, then you need to do better work in the future toward like actually maintaining shit in your company and looking at these relationships a little closer. Now, I'll also just say, I think that his defense on the crypto point was pretty shaky. Now, he, like I said, I can't run it, I'm too busy, so this firm runs it for me. But like, this is the problem with that argument, and this is also the problem to an extent with the, why would I harm my own reputation by doing this and making a fool of myself? You literally started Lunchly and work with Logan Paul, who is known for many, many controversies, but one of the most important and still talked about ones is his crypto scam shit that he's involved with. And even as recently as a couple of days ago, he was sending body doubles to interviews with like the BBC about this whole controversy and like making a mockery of it. So like on one hand, you want to make the argument of like, why would I do this and hurt my own reputation? But then you turn around and you work with known scumbags that people know, you know, are doing shitty things. And then also like with the whole crypto thing, like, yeah, people are going to look at you with a little bit more of a renewed skepticism, regardless of the answer, if you work with people like that in other elements of your business. And you can say, oh, it's circumstantial and whatnot. I understand that, but so is a lot of the things that MrBeast also said in defense of himself. A lot of this stuff is circumstantial or anecdotal, and that's really, to follow into my, like, last real point, that's the problem with a lot of this shit, is there's, like, 100 different allegations, there's, like, 100 different points being made, they all widely vary in the severity of what they are and what they actually mean. They involve so many people that it's hard to keep track of. It's been going on for so long that, like, details have been getting lost in translation, or according to MrBeast and Dogpack and others, they've been getting misconstrued. It's all just a wide spectrum of shit. There's the severe allegations, some of which seem to be not as real, some of which seem to be dead on. There's shit that just in the grand scheme of things really doesn't matter, that are being used to like prove why this point is real and that point is real. In all reality, my real thoughts on this is, I don't think MrBeast is fully innocent, and I don't think anybody who works with him or in anything in this industry really is. I think MrBeast is guilty of a lot of different shit, you know? I mean, including the shit that the internal investigation to his company also found. And I think that when it comes to some of it, he doesn't really want to answer for it because it makes him or his company look bad. But also, I think that some of these allegations are just being drummed up a little bit more and they're being made a bigger deal than they actually are, or they're being outright possibly falsified simply because, you know, it just helps, you know, the rest of the points. There's good and bad in the response video. There's, you know, good responses to certain points, bad responses to others. But ultimately, I think this thing could have been done a lot better. Did we get all of the questions that we had answered? Probably not. And in all reality, I think there's a lot of these questions that we'll never know the real full truth or answer to because all the details in it are so mishmashed or they're covered by legal ambiguity and shit like that, right? So ultimately, is Dogpack going to get sued? Looks like it. We'll have to see how that plays out in court. I mean, I'm assuming MrBeast has been building up evidence that he thinks will win him this case in all of this time. Also, on top of that, like I said, the document and the original video are down below. I just wanted to cover this and get the news out there and kind of just, you know, follow up on the previous videos that I made and kind of just wrap this entire thing up. I think it's wrapped up at least. I mean, maybe if this whole thing turns into a big fucking legal shit slinging fest, we'll probably talk about it then. But up until then, I mean, this is the response we were all waiting on. I think we got what we were looking for, you know, from MrBeast. He finally addressed things. We finally at least got some answers, whether they were good or bad. And yeah, with that being said, thank you guys for watching. If you did enjoy, make sure to leave a like, subscribe if you're brand new around here on the channel. Follow me over on Twitter and Twitch at SubTheOptimus. Make sure to check out Shoptimus down below. Thank you to my Watch Optimus subscribers. Your support helps the channel tremendously. And until my next video, guys, this is Optimus. Well, covering the MrBeast response to the allegations and signing out.